Thank you very much, Pastor Kuchio, and good afternoon, everyone. And after that very insightful presentation to us by Canon Wainaina, I am moderating a very empowered panel of panelists, and I'll start by asking them to introduce themselves. Shall I start with the lady?
Thank you, Bernice. Hi, everyone. My name is Caren Wakoli. I am a youth worker by choice. I serve young people. I am an entrepreneur. I'm a journalist by profession. I'm a political actor by choice. I advocate for political engagement, and especially political engagement that is aware and well-informed and bold enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that introduction.
Thank you very much. My name is P.L.O. Lumumba. I practice law. Thank you.
And I'm Bishop Dr. Geoffrey Njuguna. I am the senior pastor of Deliverance Church Langata, one of the bishops of Deliverance Church. I'm also quite engaged with matters governance. I am a member of the task force of peace and governance in the Interreligious Council of Kenya and other forums. I'm a leader of student, and I'm also a trainer and also a student in leadership.
Thank you. We're going to take this opportunity to interrogate the presentation that has just been made, but also to hear from our panelists, from their experience, how they would see the church as an advocate. And I think from the presentation by Canon Wainaina, my take home is that the church's appropriate relationship with the government is as prophet, ambassador, and advocate. Thus, the church has an obligation to hold the state accountable to uphold justice and righteousness. And in the introduction, Canon Wainaina did talk about advocacy, and maybe I'll just revisit and say that our topic is the church as an advocate. Who is an advocate? An advocate is someone whose job is to speak for someone, perhaps in a court of law, or a person who speaks in support of something, or a person who supports others to make their voices heard. And advocacy is the profession of an advocate or the act of giving or arguing in favor or in support of something. It is also the practice of supporting someone to make their voice heard. And a biblical example is Moses before the court of Pharaoh. And even as mentioned by Canon, Jesus, who is the mediator of the new covenant, and the Holy Spirit, who is our counselor and our helper. So advocacy presumes that there are people who need to be spoken for because there is a need and there is someone who has that opportunity. And Canon Wainaina took us through the scriptures in Micah 6:8 and Isaiah 1:17. And it's very clear to us that the heart of God is for the vulnerable, the dispossessed, the widows, the orphans. And so as I come to the panelists, I think I'll start with the dear lady, Caren. And you have already intimated that you are involved in political activity and speaking up for the underprivileged in our society. Could you tell us from your experience some opportunities that you have had to speak for the vulnerable in our society and some of the challenges that you faced as you sought to advocate for their interests and their needs, briefly?
Thank you so much for the question. In my introduction, I did not mention that I serve at Emerging Leaders Foundation. And at Emerging Leaders Foundation, we basically nurture the next generation of values-based leaders. That is the core of the work that we do. I really love the theme of this conference because essentially it is at the core of the work we do at Emerging Leaders Foundation. We know and we believe that, like John Maxwell puts it, everything rises and falls on leadership. And so when you walk around the country and see the level of poverty and see the level of disenfranchisement of different groups of people, be it young people, women, persons with disability, rural communities, persons from certain sections of the country, through which politics of exclusion has actually led us to that level, then it's really bad. It's really dehumanizing. And what we do is basically to nurture these leaders to go and create change, be it in government, in the public sector, in politics, civil society, and all those other spaces. But one thing that is really at the core of this is injustices, just as Canon talked about. I am very sure in your engagement, or as you walk around the city or communities or village shopping centers, you see sometimes a level of hopelessness, and then the question is, what do we then get to do as individuals? One of the things Canon said that really spoke to me was the fact that it's so ignorant, and allow me to say this, foolish to say you cannot engage in politics, because politics affects every aspect of our lives. The food we eat, the schools we go to, the schools our children go to, our ability to access healthcare, quality healthcare or not, our ability to move around the city or wherever it is, our ability to engage and feel involved in policy processes and decision-making processes, it's all political. So that's why I am also a big advocate that we must engage, whether as voters, as candidates, election observers, election managers, or funders of political aspirants, or people who hold other people to account, or just being even a part of a campaign mechanism or a campaign system for someone you know and you're very sure that this person is driven by values. This person has a vision for this nation. This person has the core of people at heart. This person, male, female, young person, cares about people and cares about the core of who we are. So I get to advocate for such matters, and part of the work that I do and we do at Emerging Leaders Foundation is to raise awareness. Raise awareness about participation. Why must we make our voices heard? Why must we speak? Because each and every one of us has a voice. But there are people who have no idea that they have voices, or their voices have been muzzled, that they don't feel that they matter, or that their voices matter. And that's why sometimes around election time, you see people saying, I will not vote. I will not take a voter's card because I don't feel like my vote counts, but the one who counts the votes is the one who counts. But you know what? Our voices matter. So that just that ability to be aware that there's a role we can play and teach people that speak, use your voice, speak up, like what Canon has been doing and what the rest of us are doing. Speak up, because then that is our power. We have that agency within ourselves. So we can speak through social media, we speak through broadcast media, print media, through barazas, through conferences such as this, and we're able to then enlighten each other. So I would really urge all of us to never stop speaking, speak, but most importantly, let us act out what we speak. Because I guess the greatest speech ever is how we live our lives and not really what we just speak with our mouths.
Thank you, Caren. So we must speak up. Professor Lumumba, you have had a very active private and public life as a practitioner of the law. I know that you were a director at the Kenya School of Law, CEO, the Anti-Corruption Commission. Of course, you're also known as a very eloquent orator on many subject matters. And having worked in the public and private sector, and in your experience, what are some of the issues that demand that the church must be involved in advocacy? And you could mention any that you've been directly involved in. What are the issues, in summary, briefly, I know there are many, in our private and public sector that demand that the church must be involved in advocacy?
Thank you very much. Let me start by thanking the Provost for raising very fundamental issues. The most fundamental that you raised was at the very beginning when you defined the church. There is the tendency in this country, as in most, as you rightly said, to think the church is the clergy. The church is us. And in this country, one of the most debilitating things is hypocrisy. We are hypocrites. And I've said at one time that in Kenya, those who claim to be Christians, and I use the word claim very deliberately, when the chips are down, the blood of ethnicity is thicker than the blood of Christ. And you can begin to see it now in Kenya. You now have elders of different ethnic enclaves crowning their leaders. Then on Sundays and Saturdays, they go to church. And I'm suggesting that if this country is to realize our potential, we must have men and women of courage and consistency. I've been in different spheres of life in this country. I remember when we were making the Constitution in the early 2000s, I met some very good men. But I met some of the most hypocritical individuals in this country, and they are still alive and working, and some of them want to be the presidents of this Kenya, and you will elect them, their hypocrisy notwithstanding. So that is, we must condemn such individuals. But you will not condemn them? No. They'll be coming to church. This is the season. You will place your hands on them, these hypocrites, and we know them. They are the same people who now want to amend the Constitution. The hypocrites. They want to amend the Constitution because they are mannerless. You don't amend constitutions because you are mannerless. I'm saying this because the church must be the salt of the earth.
Yeah.
You know, I want to conclude with two Bible references, if only to situate it in the Bible. One of them is to be found in Isaiah 6. And many of us read Isaiah 6 and we don't go to the root. You go to 2 Chronicles at chapter 26, you meet a king called Uzziah. In Isaiah it is said, and the Lord came to Isaiah in the year that King Uzziah died. We never say why King Uzziah died. Uzziah became king at 16. And it is recorded in the Bible that during the whole period that he listened to Zechariah, he did good things. He reigned for 52 years. But when he became powerful and arrogant, he wanted to perform a sacrifice, and we are told Azariah and 8 courageous leaders told him, you cannot. But he did, and he became a leper, and he died a leper. We have too many latter-day Uzziahs in this country. And until the day that we eliminate them, you can change your constitution what all you want, it will never be the same. The second, and I conclude, are also to be found in the Bible. One is a story that you are familiar with, the story of John the Baptist and Herod Antipas and Herodias. He condemned evil. And this is the role of the church, to condemn evil. And there are times when you must be John the Baptist. You must not do it in secret. You must come out. And when you do that, and the provost alluded to it, you must be aware that Salome will ask for your head. How many of you here are prepared to have Salome seek their heads? The last one is to be found in the book of 2 Samuel at chapter 12. It's a little story that I love. And the Lord sent Nathan to David. And he told him, there was in a city a rich man and a poor man. And this rich man had sheep and cattle. And this poor man had a ewe lamb, which he tended and stayed with as if it was his daughter. And then there was a traveler, the Bible says. And the rich man took the ewe lamb and slaughtered it for the traveler. And David says, if there is such a man, he must be punished. And the Bible records, it is you, David. You have caused Uriah the Hittite to be killed by the sword of the Ammonites. And you have taken Uriah's wife. The sword shall never depart from your house. And if it is true that Israel is of David, the sword has never departed. There are times when you can confront latter-day Davids in that way. My experience is this crop of leaders and politicians that you have do not deserve to be approached in the Nathan way. They must be approached in the way of John the Baptist. That is the only language that they understand. There was a time in this country when we had men and women who stood. I remember so very distinctly the then Provost Wakoli, Alexander Kipsang Muge. I remember even the Reverend Joya in his days, the Reverend Dikaru at Teresia. They were there. The Reverend Bishop Gitari in Uganda, Janani Luwum in South Africa, Desmond P.L.O Tutu, and many others, Emmanuel Cardinal Milingo in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In other words, even if you are alone, you must speak the truth. And the truth will set you free. It doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes. Remember, one of the ways in which this political class disable us is to conspire against you, is to lie against you. But time has a way of demonstrating your consistency. My provost, when he made the sermon, I sent him a message because I felt the Spirit was now with him. How many? These Baba and Mama establishments that are now around, these crooks, they are crooks. You must call them out because they are also confusing the congregation. And they are talked about in Paul's second letter to Timothy at chapter 3. In the end, there'll be a form of Christianity. That form of Christianity is alive and well. And it is incumbent upon us to speak about and against them. And then there is this thing that you love quoting in the book of Romans. You must ask yourself, when Paul wrote that letter, he was in jail. And you must ask yourself, who was the scribe at that time? This is theologically controversial. Not all leadership comes from God. These crooks that come into our parliaments, who tells you that God elects crooks? So don't ever say that all leadership comes from God. God permits it as a punishment to you and me. So my own view is that our lives must be our testimony. And we must speak at all times without fear of consequence. And I love my good friend Bishop Oginde. I say this because during your tenure in service, you spoke boldly. The Reverend is serving now, speaking boldly. That is the role of the church. And we are going into an election now. If we are not very careful, I can see the signs. If we are not very careful, we may lose this country. If we are not very careful. And this is the time for us to ensure that we immunize ourselves. In fact, I dare say, the active politicians in Kenya today, you are not going to say so, I'm saying it. All these fellows you see running around wanting to be the president, God save Kenya. God save Kenya. And unfortunately, one of them will be, unfortunately, but God save Kenya. God bless you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Professor. I think Bishop Njuguna, you are a man of the cloth, and you're on the pulpit. And this morning, we were told that the role of the pastor is to empower, to educate, to equip the congregation. And I'm just wondering, how are you equipping your congregation to be advocates in the marketplace? Or what would you say with regard to how do we equip the believers who come to church every Sunday to be advocates in the marketplace, to stand for Christ in the marketplace in terms of righteousness and all the things that Canon shared this morning? Maybe you could share with us, give us an idea. How do we equip our people to be advocates in the marketplace for Jesus Christ, for the gospel, and for the things that concern the heart of God, like the disenfranchised, the poor, the needy?
Yeah, that's an issue that has been raised here very powerfully today about our responsibility in addressing injustice and also becoming advocates. I believe that the church leaders should be the ones that empathize with the people who are suffering because of bad governance. And of course, Professor here, my friend Lumumba, has really said it like it is, how many times people are compromised. There are two issues that I consider to be a very serious challenge in this country. And this is greed for power and greed for wealth. Now, you realize that now when we go into the political season, many clergymen cannot take a firm position because they do not want to lose the opportunity of being given some money by the politicians. And if we are going to save this nation as a church, it's because we are going to be like Christ, to represent him for who he is. And any person called to be a bishop or a pastor, if you can't be able to overcome greed for money, and if you're going to abuse your power, because as a leadership student, one of the things I've learned, and I have said it many times, is leadership is a trust between the led and the leader. And I'm not supposed to use my position to disadvantage those that I lead. Otherwise, I've lost my moral authority to lead. And I've written a book to that effect, citing the example of Nehemiah. It is important for every leader to understand that one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things we possess, so that we live a very clear, defined mission why we responded to the call of God to ministry. Because it is a ministry, it's a calling. It's not, you see, I usually see people, threatening to go on strike. And sometimes I wondered, have you ever considered that those of us in the pulpit cannot go on strike? Okay? So it is a calling we fulfill. And sometimes I want to appeal to those who are in the teaching profession, those who are medical doctors, to consider yours is a calling. Whenever the doctors go on strike and people are dying, what is the moral? Don't they feel a sense of responsibility? Going back to our responsibility of advocacy, we need to think and see how we are going to challenge government when government fails to give the citizenry the basic needs. And only, the good thing about us as clergy, we are the only people who enjoy a gathering without any advertisement. Because every Sunday, people will come and listen to me. And I need to maximize that opportunity that God has given me. But one more thing I want to say, because I don't want to miss out this, because it's so important as we go to the elections next year. What will help us as the church is coming together and uniting as one. I felt so concerned, and you have been a public debate. You have seen what we are being told when especially on this BBI debate. We have heard in our ears being told, okay, if the church is not comfortable with BBI, let us meet at the vote. And I want to say this. That's an insult of the highest order. Because if today the church was going to be united, the KCCB, the NCCK, EAK, and all other charismatic movements, there is no referendum that can pass in Kenya if the church said no. And we need to realize that, because it's the truth. And that is why we must say, even now, as we talk about supporting the judiciary, my wish and prayer as advocacy, as a church, is to appeal to our leaders, and we respect them. Please, don't drive the country into a crisis. We're in serious indebtedness. We can't be talking about a referendum. We appeal for Parliament to do the basic amendments in readiness of the election. But please, that referendum talk, can we ask somebody, can it stop? Because like a very good friend of mine, Joe Ageo, said in the Angle last week, where is the time? Where is the time? Matters are about to go to the Court of Appeal. And I can tell you, if the Court of Appeal does not rule in favor of those lawyers who are advocating, they'll go to the Supreme Court. We know referendums cannot be done 1 year to election. So there's no time. That's my position. We are advocates to speak for the voiceless, and we have a platform to do so. But more of my appeal, church leaders, and you're all here, from the Catholic Church, from the Evangelical Alliance, from the NCCK, can we for once ask our leaders, particularly our general secretaries of all those main organizations, to begin having regular meetings, to know how they are going to speak as one. And let me tell you, the hope of this country is in two institutions, the church and the judiciary. If the church should fail, remember our accountability is God himself. If the judiciary should fail, maybe we don't know, because you said that the executive and the legislatures are having a challenge, according to you, my friend Provost.
Thank you, Bishop Njuguna. I think because of time, and the MCs can guide me, we can open up to questions now. You'll agree with me that this is a very empowered panel of speakers, very passionate and very committed to their cause. But I'll allow questions so that we can proceed in that manner. MCs are going to help me. Yes.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gachegu. Thank you so much. And I can see the floor is already quite fired. And I have to balance everything from gender to honor. Unfortunately, I'm very young. I wish I was older so that I could overrule, but now I can't. So I think I will start with the table that is close to me. It's at the front. Jesus said something about the tables at the front, so I want to begin. So I think, kindly, if you don't mind.
Can I make a comment? Please do not comment. Let's just get the questions so we give others a chance. Because if we begin to comment, then we lose our time. So please just give us your question and then we will answer it. And be brief if possible.
Thank you very much. I'll invite you kindly. Let me see your hands kindly so that I can be able to pick. Let me just see your hands. I think there was a hand here. Oh, it's okay. No comment, just questions.
I reserve a thank you. I reserve a thank you and a comment for later. But let me ask the question. I am Bishop Alfred Rotich. Now, P.L.O. Lumumba and the panel and the provost. When do we start vetting the would-be leaders? When do we start vetting our candidates for the next? Because you told us they are hypocrites. And I believe When should we start vetting for the leadership tomorrow? And what is the criterion? The qualities. Yes, what are the qualities? Because we have mulled around the question, and I think the kairos, the moment is now, but I'm asking for the panel to voice it, to raise your voice. When is the time? Thank you.
My name is Gerald Mwangi, Ole Walter Fang. Mine is just drawn from the wonderful presentation that has been given. All presidential candidates will be in the presidential race. One of them will be president. If we do know this as a matter of fact, what are we doing about it? What are we doing about it? Second, last question. This issue of a united church has been a consistent question that has come out. What is it that is halting us to be united? Thank you.
I think we can first start with those two, and then you'll have some other two from the online viewers.
Yes, I think I'll ask Professor Lumumba to answer Bishop Rotich's question. You got the question? All right. And then Canon Wainaina, would you answer the question on the united church? What is failing us? And the other question, what are we doing about it? Yeah.
Thank you very much. As it is now, there are no presidential candidates. The candidates will officially be there in the month of May next year. There are individuals who say they want to be president. And most of those individuals, we know them. They served in President Moi's administration, and most of them served badly. They served in President Kibaki's administration, and they served badly. Some of them are serving in President Kenyatta's administration, and they are serving badly. There are people whom we know. They have wealth which they cannot explain. Some of them have led this country, people to kill themselves, and we know them. We know them. And we must now ask ourselves, is this the group? Is this the individual that we want to lead us? And I'm saying that there are individuals, some of whom will present themselves, some of whom have already presented themselves. But because we are caught up in a time warp, the media will not give them the oxygen of publicity. When they come to your churches, which the clergy here will preside over, you'll not give them the oxygen of publicity because they'll not give you money. When they come to funerals at which you preside, you'll also not give them the oxygen of publicity. I'm suggesting to you that you must choose men and women who are not animated by ethnicity. It's a book written by Koigi Wawamwere towards genocide in Kenya, the curse of negative ethnicity. Read that book. And all these individuals that you know them, I'll not name them, but you know them. These are ethnic kingpins who in a proper country ought not to be elected. Number two, we must have men and women whose sources of wealth we know. We have men in this country who, even if they worked for 100,000 years, they would not have earned the money that they have. If they are thieves now, They are going to be thieves when they become presidents. I was the director of anti-corruption authority. I know all of them. They are thieves. They must be men and women who have compassion in their heart, and they are there. I'm not saying that they are angels. All of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God and man. But I'm saying that they are people that you can give the benefit of doubt. Then we must have men and women who are consistent. What they said 5 years ago, they do not change unless there is evidence that justifies change. They are such men and women. I conclude with an example of a friend of mine called Bishop Adoyo, whom you know. Bishop Adoyo contested to be the senator in Nairobi, and I voted for him. When I vote for you in this country, you normally don't get elected. I voted for Adoyo. I voted for Martha Karua. They don't get elected. I told Adoyo at the Nairobi club, you are going to contest to be a senator, even those who are your congregants at the Nairobi Pentecostal will not vote you. Because on the day of the election, they'll be asking whether you are Luo, Kamba, or Kikuyu, and whether you have given them money. He was never elected. I personally contested in Kamukunji, held 250 town hall meetings with people like this, including clergy. Hypocrites, complete hypocrites. Until the day that we changed that, and the provost was quite clear, the software is the problem. Until the day we change, my dear bishop, not in your lifetime, not in my lifetime, but it can change if we make a resolve. Countries have changed dramatically. I pray and hope that that will become our country come next year. But on the evidence that I see now, I doubt.
Thank you, Professor. I think Canon, if you could respond.
I think I want to build on what Professor has said. And the question actually should come back to us. Are we ready for change? Don't answer, don't be too quick. Be a bit critical with your answer. Are you ready for change? Even before we list down on the criteria, what type of leader have you elected in the past? How different would it be today, given the same circumstances? You would think of people that you know that are corrupt. We, the believers, remember the church definition, it's me, before it becomes body corporate. We have elected people that we know are corrupt, people who have maybe participated in ethnicizing this society and participating in corrupt leadership, and you still elect them. I'm asking you the question, are you ready for a change? If today a godly man stood, a godly man, a woman, and man is a generic term. If a woman or a man who is godly, without any monies or baggage, would stand to be the president of this nation, would you elect them? Would you? It's you to answer that question. Because indeed, Kenya, we have men and women who can lead this nation. Yes, Bishop, the bishop you referred to, if members of his own congregation cannot vote for him, it is because they believe that politics is evil, is corrupt. Therefore, you as a bishop, you have served us, you have now retired, how can we elect you now to become a senator? When you dichotomize things that way, then godly men will never be in senates and in parliament. Very soon, if we decided as the Christian community to give the oxygen energy that Professor is talking about to one Christian man or a woman, or a number of them, and supported them and voted for them, we would hold them accountable. But let me tell you, all the people that are fronting themselves, they are only good to you when they come to church. After that. And you know, me, and you have seen, I've never prayed for anyone at my altar at All Saints. I can't. I have seen bishops praying for politicians and anointing them, declaring them to be presidents. It is because whoever pays the piper calls the tune. We have become clergy that bow on the altars of money. Some, they go to this politician, and I don't want to mention them, you know them. You know where you go. You receive money here, and some of us have received money in multiple altars. You cannot condemn an altar in which you have received a favor. And Bishop Njuguna said, and we know it is true, we've been in those forums. And let me tell you, and I say this before the Almighty God, I have never received anything. I have never. And that's why I would speak without, I have not been paid by anyone. Clergy, if we stood and we were serious about it, let me tell you, we have power. And the gospel doesn't make us popular. It only makes us relevant. Be serious about the gospel. And so, the United Church, I think for the first time, this summit has brought the church together. And I want to thank God for this. And this should not be an end, it should be the beginning. And very soon, I know after this we'll be sitting to evaluate what we have achieved. Very soon we must come up with even ideas and suggestions on the quality of the kind of leaders we need. Not just as the president. Anybody who wants to vie, we as a Christian body will say the following are the qualifications. Then it is your conscience then to take you to the polling station and saying, no, I will vote so and so because he's a man and woman of integrity.
Bernice, I want to contribute to that conversation.
Yes.
So there's this conversation that the leaders we have, or the people in authority that we have, are basically a reflection of who we are. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah, it's true. We
So
have become a nation of thieves.
So it's just a reflection of who we are. So do we need to have personal reflection? Because if I do not go to vote because I feel politics doesn't concern me, then essentially I have voted in the person who has voted for themselves, or who has looked for goons to put them into power or give them the nomination certificate or whatever it is. If I do not educate the people I come into contact with about civic awareness, civic education, the need to engage and make wise political decisions and to be politically literate, then I'm basically contributing to that. When I go to my tribal cocoon or clan cocoon to say I will only vote for this person or this person because they come from my tribe and our region and our community has been disenfranchised for years since independence, then I'm basically contributing to that. Mensa Otabil, one of the preachers and educationists from Ghana, talks about hunter paradigm and the farmer paradigm of leadership, because I do believe that each and every one of us is a leader. Everybody at the core of who they are, we're leaders. But sometimes it just takes another leader to call out the leader in us to realize that, oh, I can influence change, I have power, I can do this and I can do that. And he says that a lot of times, and what I see in our country and on the continent at large is leaders who operate from the hunter paradigm. You wake up in the morning, you go and hunt. Get for the day whatever it is you get to get for the day, go home, roast it, eat, wait for tomorrow, and again go hunting. Never thinking about tomorrow, never thinking about transferring skills, never thinking about value addition and things like that. And then we have this other paradigm of leaders who operate from the farmer kind of paradigm, where they think about sowing a seed, watering that seed, tending to that seed and whatever germinates, taking care of it. And do you imagine that whatever you get to sow, you reap so much, much more than that? And then they talk about value addition. In this audience here today, do we have any leaders who are actually multiplying themselves and the skills that they have, the knowledge that they have, the experience and the wealth of knowledge that you have gathered? Do you have any younger person or any less experienced person that you're actually mentoring and transferring those skills to and telling the young people that, you know what, you can be wealthy with integrity? That in fact, wealth doesn't really matter. What matters is, have you discovered your core, your passion, that then you get to make a difference in society through that? If you get wealthy along the way, that is awesome. But then the main thing is not rallying towards being wealthy and being rich, because then even the role models the media is portraying is just of rich individuals. And like many of us are saying, questionable wealth. So personal reflection, I think, is very critical. We have individuals who get appointed to head institutions, they collapse those institutions, go to another one, plunder the resources, go to another one, and yet that cycle sort of just goes on and on. Are we those individuals? Have we failed our children or even the younger generation in any way?
I think, can we have...
Thank you, Caren. A moment of reflection, that's right. More questions?
Yeah, just a few online questions given our time. We're having two related questions from our online community. One is coming from Jen Gitao.
We'll take the questions, but there's a considered opinion that Bishop Karanja's hand has been up for so long that we allow him and then we'll get the ones on.
Yeah, what I will do is, let's start with the online ones, and then I will give Bishop Karanja one. Yeah, I think that would do. We're having two questions which are related. One is, what should the church do after you have spoken truth to power and there is no response? And that is related to the question of how do we organize then? Because if your action is not being responded to, how do you organize? And also, how do you redeem what you are unsuccessful in changing?
Okay.
Do you want to read at least 2 or 3?
They are all related. So I was thinking, because they are very lengthy questions, so I've decided to just bring a summary so that so we're saying the first question is, church has spoken to government, there is no response. The second question, very close to that, is how do we organize church to take action, presumably because the desired action is not being taken. And then thirdly, how do you redeem what you have tried changing and you have been unsuccessful at doing in the case of politics?
Okay, so Prof, you could speak to how do we respond after we have spoken and we're not successful, we're not getting anywhere. Bishop, you could talk about how do we organize. And the third one is how do we redeem Canon? Maybe you could talk to that. Could start us off, Prof.
Thank you very. You know, there was a time when I was a little younger, and I thought that everything must happen during my lifetime. I no longer think like that. when you want everything to happen in your lifetime, you'll be disappointed. This is intergenerational. If you think intergenerationally, you make your own contribution. And we must consistently speak. And I keep on giving this example of the American Civil Rights Movement, which started in the 19th century. And as recently as 1963, Martin Luther was speaking about it from the pulpit. And as recently as last year, we were speaking about it with George Floyd. So you can see it takes years. So we keep on speaking. And what the young lady has said, are you raising a successor generation? Today, the Reverend Dr. Canon and Bishop, whom I know, must see themselves in the mold of the older clergymen. You did not start now. This has been over 100 years. So let us not judge our success on the basis of our very short lifetimes. We must keep on speaking and keep on speaking. Kenya is only 58 years. Some of the things we are saying will happen in 200 years. And historians will say it started 200 years ago. That is my answer.
Okay, in terms of organizing, I think there are very clear ways in which we can organize, and this organization needs to be how we are going to consolidate what we have in terms of speaking a common agenda and persistently not giving up, no matter the attitude we see. And a few of us have come out, some you may have seen us in the press, and we have a responsibility to keep saying what we believe is the right thing to be said. In terms of the courage, but I say for organization, we have umbrella bodies. Bishop Oginde chairs the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. I'm sure he relates well with whoever is the chairman of the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops. I'm sure he can also reach the chairman of NCCK. And there are other, of course, umbrella bodies. If we can have these people beginning to come together and speaking as one. Michael Cassidy, the one who founded Africa Evangelistic Enterprise, said in regard to South Africa that the state will never respect a voice from a divided church. The challenge we have in this country, even as we go into next year, is how easily church leaders are divided along ethnic lines. I still remember, just a few years ago, we could release a statement here in Nairobi, and another one would be released in Kisumu challenging what we said here. And I'm talking about realities. If you read well, you know what I'm saying is true. What will change in the organization is when we become Christians and we are loyal to Christ and his calling more than we are loyal to our tribal royalties. And I will not forget in 2007, after the crisis we went through, there was a meeting that was at the Presbyterian Church headquarters. And people wanted to react because you remember that time it was so many against one. And I happened to come from the community of the one. I mean, I didn't choose it, and I'm not sorry about it. I have no apology to make. But I refused to be party of the press conference. And I told them, the reason I can't join you is not because necessarily I don't believe what you want to say, but I represent here a constituency that is beyond my tribe. I am a pastor within the cosmopolitan where our people, and some of you, I don't know whether Bishop Ogide can remember, the 208, when we went to 208 after 207, there was so much tension in our churches because of what had happened in the Rift Valley. And we had to work very hard to keep the church together. Now, we cannot wait for another repeat of what we suffered in 2007. One of the things I've been advocating for is, one, if we are going to have any referendum, whatever time it comes, let it be a referendum built on consensus. Because the reason we went to a crisis in 2007 was because of the 2005 referendum. That was the recipe. I did a research myself. And of course, we happen to, we are alumni of the same seminary with Dr. Wainaina, who just came from there. I did mine in 2011. But I did establish in my research that the crisis of 2007 was as a result of our conflict in 2005. And that is why I was so worried when we were talking about referendum this time with an election next year. I still am of the same opinion. One thing I'm so glad is that I know there's no time for a referendum. So at least I know that will come after that. But having said that, let the organization take place today, that the different church bodies will begin coming together. And of course, I'm saying this with knowing still that there are a big constituency of few people, I don't know whether I should say few or many, who still are talking about the reggae going on, but we in the church front have not been for reggae. We want constitutional amendment, but not in the name of reggae. I don't know where the name came from, but anyway, that is besides the point.
Well, the two have really spoken well, and I've been asked to comment on what? What was it?
The question was, how do you redeem what you cannot change?
Yes, and I liked what you said, Caren, about the hunter-farmer paradigms. And we're thinking that things can happen today and during our time. Why is Kenya a democratic country? Why do we enjoy the freedom that we have today? It is because we are today standing on the shoulders of those church leaders who are there before us. Many of them were battered, many of them were killed and harassed. As you read that story, please think about their sacrifice for the enjoyment of today. So they were not hunters, they were farmers. They planted the seed, they nurtured it, sometimes with their own personal blood. And so what we are doing today, the leaders of 20 years to come will stand on our shoulders. Remember, we are standing on others' shoulders. They will be able to do bigger and greater things. And I think what God is calling us to is to be faithful now. And our now will push us many years to come. I think what we lack is the consistency. Let's keep planting the seed. As the Bible says in Proverbs, you don't just plant when there is rain. Even when there is no rain, keep doing it. And because we have senior clergy in our midst, in the name of our bishops, I know you know your networks well. Let's consolidate. But beyond the Christian body, let's be ecumenical. Let's be ecumenical. The Muslims are our brothers. And the moment you reach out to them, you get another constituency that is important. So that we stop now talking about just Christian and we talk of religious. And if you have the religious harmony, you can imagine what it will mean politically.
And in the spirit of farming, I would really urge us to go back to the home. Let's go back to our families where it matters the most. The people we see in the public spaces, they came from the families. Might there be that some parents were not present to nurture their children up in the right way and inculcate values in them, that then they have grown up just knowing greed is the way, let me amass and amass and amass, and that is all that matters, and they have no compassion and empathy and care for people. But yet, in the same breath, the leaders who are making great change that we see in society, again, came from families where dad and mom were present to guide them and talk to them and show them a good example. So success out here doesn't matter if we're not successful in the home. So please, let's go back to our homes and be successful in the home first before being successful outside. Thank you.
My name is Bishop Philip Karanja, and I want to ask one question after I have said this, that in 1992, I thought I would help my constituency by running to become the MP. I was a bishop, but they elected somebody that didn't even go to church. And again, in the year 2002, actually the person they elected against me was a person who stood and reminded the people, you all know I'm a thief. And they all said, yes. Can I go and steal and bring it to you? They said, yes. And that's the person they elected. Now, the question I would like to ask is that what I discovered in those few years I was running to help my constituency, and Bishop Njuguna is from my constituency, I learned that any person who reads the Bible in one language does not really understand it. And I'm so glad for the people that speak to us and they speak and they say in Greek it says this, and in Hebrew it says this. And surely when you look at them and listen to them, you see the difference. So this is my question. Is there a way that we can make a conference like this one and make them very many in all our 47 counties and bring the most unlearned preachers, because they are the one who lead the people who are saying that they can go and erect, but unless those not very educated preachers speak to the people and tell them this is the man of God we want to elect, we will still not make it. But I am so convinced that one day, as this man of God has been saying, there is a man of God or a woman of God in this country who we need to elect. But if they are not spoken to by their shepherds, they will not accept.
Say something.
You can respond to the questions.
Bernice, I just want to remind the audience about something about religious unity.
Prof would like to make a comment.
Just a comment.
I need to be guided on time. Are we taking more questions, or shall I allow my panelists to give their closing, their shorting
I'm
remark?
having an appeal just for one lady in the interest of gender. Just one lady who had raised her hand, and I think that's going to be the last question.
Okay, so I'll allow Professor to comment, and then we'll take the lady's question, and then I'll take a shorting, a last point.
Okay.
And I want to make this comment. Those of you will remember in the run-up to the Constitution review process when the religious community came together at Ufungamano. That is the spirit that must be revived. And what has been said by Bishop Karanja about replicating this in the 47 counties is very important. I attend funerals in my rural home, and I'm scared about some of the things I hear being said, even by clergy, in mother tongue. I've attended them in different parts of the country, even in languages that I don't understand. We are going into an election where nobody is prepared to lose. And that is a recipe for disaster. So you who have the power and authority to speak to those of us who are the laity, speak to us now. It's very important. Thank you.
Can I suggest as we go into those forums, like the NCCK and other bodies, that we come up with a calendar of events. If the election is next year, August, we start working backwards to today. What do we need to do today that will culminate into the August 2022? And I want even to suggest that we come up with curriculum for our pulpits. The pulpit is such a powerful tool that can transform this nation. And if our church leaders agree, if my archbishop will say, yes, what will I do in January? Is to pick up the curriculum, take the Christians through the same, whether it is in the pulpit, in the radio, in the television, and we do our proper research and teach our people properly. Let's be as practical as possible. A curriculum. Then at the end, we'll be able to define what type of a leader do we need in this nation. And we come up with a criteria.
Now, my last comment is about a book I've written recently, which is The Church Being the Moral Compass of the Nation. And in that book, which I wrote with church leaders in mind, is that we should disciple our congregants to play the role of being able to infuse society with moral values. What you see happening every day, if you open the news, sometimes you get so tired about the killings, about the murders, domestic, and all. And the only hope is the church. And I pray that the church will go back to evangelism. I know right now, because of the COVID restrictions, we have not had any crusade for more than a year. The only people who are still having their meetings are the politicians. But the church, we are not having any crusades yet. So the key thing is that what can we do? And what informed me in the writing of this book was a statement in a quoted publication in Zambia, where the founding father of this nation, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, said that the church is the moral conscience of society and should be able to tell what is right or wrong in any given community. I wish that everybody who has come after him can get to know that we have a role to play in influencing policy and politics in the nation.
I would say let's lead by example. And I just wish to affirm the words of Canon, that if this particular forum is going to go to the different counties to reach out to the clergy and the public, then we would really, really need to be genuine in our civic education and in our engagement and enlightening of the public. Because sometimes people do things because they don't know better. They do them the way they do them because they don't know better. They haven't seen better. But if we can show them better and enlighten them, then we will actually be going the right way. So I would say let's lead by example and do a massive, genuine, intentional, deliberate civic education. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernice. Thank you, the servants of God, and my provost who is here. Advocacy has just taken place right now for a woman to be able to ask a question, so I thank God for that. Elisha in 2 Kings 4:13 said, "Can we speak on your behalf to the king or the commander of the army?" And my question is this church in the position to actually, is it at the level of the people's need as Elisha was? Elijah identified with the Shunammite woman to be able to know this woman needs something. And ask this woman, I'm wondering whether we are at the level of truly empathizing with the children on the streets, with the orphans and the unhope for us before we speak. Secondly, are we, on that question still, are we at the level of being able to pick a call, as Elijah would say, can I speak on behalf to the commander or the king? Are we at that level of respect to be able to pick a call and call the president or the commander in army to say there's something that is happening in Turkana? And that is the question, do we need first to go back to that level before we actually seek the level of advocacy? The last question is to my provost. What is the convergence between a prophet, an advocate, and a watchman? A prophet is the one that speaks on behalf of God to the government, and I believe that's what is lacking at most. A watchman is speaking on behalf of the people, the helpless. Sorry, an advocate. A watchman, you watch, and you're able to inform the advocate as well as, and I'm wondering the convergence of those three coming together. Thank you.
Canon, the question was directed to you, the last question. And then there was a question about, are we able to pick up a phone and call the president? Are we empathizing with the people, the children, the disenfranchised? Is the church at that level of empathy with the citizen? I'll call them the citizen. Who's going to answer that one? Okay, Professor, if you'd answer that.
see, if you're a Christian, and I claim to be a practicing Christian, whether that is true, the others will judge, but I make that claim. And one of the things that you must do in whatever station you are is to question things. The day before yesterday, I wrote 2 letters. One was to the Registration Bureau that deals with registration of companies. And this is what I told the gentleman, that in the last 1 year that I've dealt with you, you have improved tremendously. I was appreciating the good that has been done. The second letter I wrote to the Ombudsman, and I told the Ombudsman that I work in Kenya and I work in different countries, and government departments and government ministries in Kenya are some of the worst. You hold mwongozo workshops, you go for benchmarking, but you cannot as much as respond to letters. But I chose the following organizations, and I told them, except the National Transport Authority, except Kenya National Highway Authority, except Nairobi Metropolitan Service, except the Kenya School of Law, except the ESCC. And I'm answering your question, that we must condemn and also praise when it is worthy. Because that is what good citizenship is all about. And we don't do that often enough. We must rebuke and praise at the same time. And I'm quite certain, and the men and women who are here, at least I can speak for Bishop Rotich, I can speak for Bishop Oginde, I can speak for Canon Wainaina, because I've seen them do that publicly. But how many do it in our different spaces? It takes a bubble to make an ocean. So make your contribution in whatever station you are at, and that will be your contribution. Ask yourself, what do I do privately and publicly to change my immediate circumstances? And that is what Elisha was dealing with. And when you are told, therefore, that in Kenya we have a very unique thing here, says in Kenya we are told, hiyo ni siasa, which should mean that it is a bad thing. But what is siasa? Siasa is about governance, how we govern our affairs. So there's village politics, there is domestic politics, how you run your affairs. We are all politicians of that mold, and you've got to complain. And one of the things that we must do is to keep on, suppose Kenyans were to have a day of rage, where we express our dissatisfaction with what is happening. And on that day, even if it is only for 1 hour, I've seen it happening in Chile, wherever you are, you come out and knock pots across the country. Can we ever have that? When we call a day of rage in Kenya, you'll suddenly realize you are Kikuyu. That is a Luo affair. You'll suddenly realize that you are Kamba. You'll forget that you are a Christian who worships at the All Saints Cathedral, or the Basilica, or the Nairobi Pentecostal. Until the day that we are capable of rising up and expressing rage as Christians, all this will be hollow talk. And you must be consistent about it. There are too many Baals asking to be worshipped in this country. Choose you now whom you shall worship. Yes. Choose you now. Amen. Thank you.
Convergence of prophets, watchmen, and advocates. From a biblical point of view, whenever God appointed a king, he appointed a prophet or prophets. Under the rule of every king, there was a prophet. Prophets are not many. Pastors are many. And prophet is not a title you are given. It's actually the calling that you have over your life. Prophecy sometimes it's not something you do every day. It is a spirit that comes upon you at a particular time. There are some people that were called to prophesy over maybe one thing or two, and that is the only thing we know about them. We had others that had the spirit of prophecy above them for a long time. A prophet is a loner. A loner. And sometimes people wonder whether you have a proper head even to talk. Why are you talking? Let me say, from a personal point of view, I haven't been a prophet. So to claim that I'm a prophet would not be right. However, I remember in January, I had planned my calendar on how I will preach. And I remember one time going home. My deputy called and said, Provost, you need to confirm a few things so that everything is prepared. It's a Friday. And I told him, can I get home? I have been disturbed the entire week. I feel there's something that God wants this nation to hear. I wasn't comfortable. I tried telling my wife. She told me, no, you can't say that. So prophecy is not something you share with your wife. It's not even something you tell others. I tried giving my notes even to my clergy and telling them, this is what we need to say. They never said it. I realized it was me. And it came at a particular time. This is my 8th year as the provost of All Saints, and I only have 2 years before I exit. Prophecy is coming this year. Why? I don't know. I have always written. I have written even open letters to the president. Why? I don't know. And sometimes the mind of a prophet is a mind that is difficult to understand because they are being led by God to say certain things. They may not say it perfectly. Nevertheless, they say it clearly to the people. So, you can't be a prophet who is not a watchman. Because as a prophet, you'll see something wrong and the Lord will tell you, say it. Raise your voice. You cannot be a prophet without being an advocate. Those are roles that go with the office of prophecy.
Thank you. We're now going to conclude. I'm told time is up, but I just feel encouraged to just share very briefly. One is what Caren said about the farmer. And I'm aware that we have many young people here, and we really do need to teach the young people the patience to labor in the farm, because young people are in such a hurry. And Prof alluded to it. When I think of great freedom movements on the globe, you know, if you know that Mahatma Gandhi fought for independence, but he never became president of India. When Nelson Mandela became president, there is Steve Biko and others who died. Somebody talked about their blood. So people always labor, and someone said it may not come in your lifetime, but your labor in the Lord is not in vain. And the young people here need to plan long term. Let us not be always thinking about tomorrow. Let's plant today for the generations to come and be faithful to do that. I also like the idea of commending. Because our people are so unhappy, poverty is so high, we really are a nation of grumblers, and I know that that dishonors God. It is good to commend what is good. And I just wanted to give an example. I was coming from Mombasa International Airport, and I went into the toilet. And the toilet was so clean, I didn't think I was in Kenya. Because in Sharia house, if you came to the lift, you would know where the toilet is from the smell. So I thought, this toilet is so clean. And when the girl came, I said, I just want to commend you. This toilet is so clean. And when I went to wait for my flight, I thought, that's not good enough. So I took a pen and paper and I wrote a letter. And I said, I passed by this airport and the toilet was so clean. And I want to commend, and I put her name. And she got promoted. Because I thought, this is not good enough. Where do you find a toilet like this in a public place? So let's also begin to commend the good, because then it shines in the midst of darkness. Because there are many good Kenyans who are alone, but they're doing a good job. Thank you for commending the registrar. Wherever we can, I'm a public servant, and I tend to get very wounded when I find public servants who are not serving, because it gives the government a bad name, it gives the president a bad name, and as public servants, we are paid by taxpayers' money. We are actually servants of the people because we are paid by taxpayers. We should go home if we're not ready to do the job. So I really get wounded. But when I find a public servant who is serving, I commend them because they're giving a good name to our government, a good name, and we really need to also commend. So please join me to congratulate my panelists and a very, very good session that we've had. Thank you.